Thank you for joining us this evening to find out more about Council's draft Domestic Animal Management Plan. Firstly, I'd like to recognise the rich Aboriginal heritage of this country and acknowledge the Wurundjeri Willem clan as the traditional owners of this place, and acknowledge all elders past, present and emerging. I also just want to let you know that this evening there is closed captioning available, and you can see this by pressing the CC icon on the screen. Council's Domestic Animal Management Plan is the blueprint for how we will maintain and enhance harmony between pets, people, other animals and the environment in the City of Whittlesea. Our pets play an important role in our lives, from being our exercise companions to a source of comfort and so much more. Council is committed to balancing the wellbeing of pets with the needs of the community as a whole. The draft plan outlines how Council will oversee the management of cats and dogs, and this is everything from handling nuisance complaints to controlling overpopulation, monitoring domestic animal businesses, encouraging and enforcing responsible pet ownership, and much, much more. I would really like to thank all of you who shared your ideas with us in the initial consultation phase earlier this year. Your input has helped inform this draft plan greatly. I also thank you to everyone too that has already provided their feedback on this draft plan. We really value your input and look forward to considering it as part of the final plan that will go to Council for consideration in November this year. First up in this session this evening, our Manager of Compliance and Environmental Health, Debbie, will tell you all a bit more about what's in the draft plan and what are the initiatives that are proposed. After Debbie, our Coordinator of Animal Management, Ben, and Unit Manager of Operations, Michael, will answer any questions you might have about domestic animal management activities in the municipality. We also have here this evening Adrian, our Team Leader of Public Realm Development, and Alex, one of our landscape architects. And they're going to be able to answer any questions about dog parks, bins and signage. So that's it from me. I'm now going to hand over to you, Debbie. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Justin. Okay, welcome everybody. So my job tonight is to run you through what's in our domestic animal management plan. So we'll start off by going over what a domestic animal management plan actually is. So it is essentially a plan that all councils in Victoria are required to develop every 4 years as a requirement of the Domestic Animals Act. And it essentially outlines our initiatives for managing both dogs and cats over the next 4 years. What's in the plan, the content that's in the plan is actually prescribed by the state government. So it's set out by the state government, and everything that you see in the plan is what council needs to report on up to the state government. And we also report on our progress annually. And essentially the idea behind the plan is to make sure, as Justin said, that both people and pets can live harmoniously and safely in our municipality. So just for some context, in the City of Whittlesea, we have over 25,000 pets that are registered. And as you can see, most of those are dogs, but we certainly are seeing an increase in the number of cats as well. And every week we receive about 100 new registrations. We have 8 dog off-leash areas in our parks across the municipality, and we run our pound services out of the Epping Animal Welfare Facility, and that includes reuniting people with their pets, but also adopting animals out when pets aren't reclaimed. Some of the biggest issues and complaints related to animal management in our municipality that we get from our community relate to roaming cats, barking dogs, people not picking up after their dogs, and dogs off leash in areas where they're supposed to be on leash, just as a bit of context. So our journey so far to get to this point, and Justin did touch on this, we did undertake some community engagement earlier this year in April and May, and that included some pop-up stalls throughout the city of Whittlesea, but also with our partners, Moreland City Council and the City of Darebin, who we share our Epping Animal Welfare facility with. And from those stalls and from an online survey and from interviewing some key stakeholders in the animal management industry, we had more than 3,000 contributions that has helped to inform this plan from just over 1,600 people, which is a really great effort. And we're really proud of the draft plan that we've been able to put before you because it reflects what the community has told us. So this public exhibition period is really our final check-in with you, the community, to make sure that we've captured what it is that you wanted to see in our draft domestic animal management plan and to add in anything that we might have missed through the consultation. So there are many different items within the draft plan. As you'll see, and there are some bigger ticket items there, which are the proposed mandatory cat desexing and also the community engagement for our potential cat curfew. But there's so much more than that, and you can see those up on the screen. So I'll take you through those in the presentation. So some of the bigger items, we do have a big issue in our municipality with an overpopulation of cats, particularly what we call semi-owned cats, which are those cats that you might see out and about that nobody owns, but people feed them. And they're not microchipped, they're not registered, and they're not desexed, which just leads to more and more cats and a growing issue. So to begin to address this, 3 of the main initiatives that we're considering. The first one is the proposed mandatory cat desexing for all new registrations from 2022 onwards. The second is expanding our discounted desexing program and exploring a mobile desexing program. And the third is undertaking community engagement about potentially introducing a cat curfew. And like I said, both the mandatory cat desexing and the potential curfew would be subject to further community consultation. So in regards to mandatory cat desexing, 96% of the cats that are registered with the City of Whittlesea are already desexed, which is really wonderful. And this proposal is being put forward to maximise that number, to make sure that we're not having unwanted litters and all of the welfare issues that are associated with that. It's really important to note this wouldn't apply to cats that are already registered with the City of Whittlesea. It would only be new cats that are being registered. And one of the benefits of that is that desexed pets are actually cheaper to register than pets that are not desexed. So coupling this desexing with a potential cat curfew, we believe would make an impact on the number of unwanted and unowned litters in the municipality, and it would start to make an impact on the number that we're seeing. Just moving on to our proposed cat curfew and the future consultation that we have planned. So when we did our community engagement for this draft plan that you see before you, we didn't specifically ask the community about a cat curfew. But even so, we had 144 mentions of introducing a curfew. And so we decided from that that there was enough interest that we should have a proper conversation with our community about whether this is something they want their council to do. And as you would have seen on the engagement platform, it's quite a polarising topic. There's people that have very opposite views, and that makes it even more important about why we need to have this conversation. So if we did go down this path, if the community did want a cat curfew, it would require owners to make sure that their cats are contained to their property, the same way that dog owners currently have to do that now. And it's really important to note that if we went down that path, that cats can still go outside, but they would need to be contained to the owner's property. We have absolutely no preconceptions about what a curfew might look like if we chose to go down this path. So currently, almost half of Victorian councils have a curfew in place, and several others are considering introducing one through their new domestic animal plans, just as we are. And there's a real mix of curfews out there which go from dusk till dawn, and some are for 24 hours. And that would actually form part of our conversation as part of the community engagement. The other thing that's really important to note is that if we go down this path, cat curfews don't work on their own. They're not a silver bullet and not a fix-all. And it would essentially work as another tool for our officers to be able to address some of those nuisance issues, but it would also need to be coupled with an expanded cat trapping program, more desexing, and educating cat owners about their responsibilities so that we've got a bigger impact. I'll just move on to pet registrations. As most of you will know, registering cats and dogs is a requirement of the Victorian government, and council is actually required to pass on a proportion of every registration fee to the state government. So we're effectively collecting the fee on behalf of the state. And we often get asked what pet owners get for their registration dollars. In short, it helps us to pay for our animal management services. And that includes things like our lost and found service for stray animals, our officers investigating animal-related complaints and dog attacks. It pays for our dog parks, care for animals at our Epping Animal Welfare Facility. It helps us to make sure that we've got oversight of dangerous and restricted breed dogs, and it helps to subsidise our discounted desexing programs and our responsible pet ownership program. However, we understand that there is a bit of discussion around registration fees, and we can talk a bit more about that. I'm sure there's a couple of questions that we've got around that. But essentially what we want to do is to incentivise people to register their pets and to do the right thing. And that's why we're considering offering either discounted or first year free registrations. Education is also another really important part of responsible pet ownership, and you'll see that it's a key theme throughout the draft plan, and we have several actions that we're planning that are aimed to educate pet owners, and those include things like hosting an annual pet event in partnership with Moreland and Darebin City Councils, hosting online webinars involving local vets, rescue groups, animal shelters, and our own animal management staff. Looking at a program of meeting your animal management officer sessions, so you can find out a bit more about what our animal management team does and what support that they can offer you and your pet. And also several social media campaigns on topics that the community have told us are important to them, such as cleaning up after your dog, keeping your dog on leash, what to do if you find a lost pet, and how to choose the right pet for your family. The next section is around responsible dog ownership. And as we said earlier, our role is really to work with pet owners to make sure that pets and people can live together safely in our municipality. And one way to do this is to ensure that dogs are on leash in the municipality, except in those designated off-leash areas. And we understand it's a really big concern to the community. We often receive complaints about people doing the wrong thing and letting their dog off leash in some of those non-designated areas. But we do conduct regular patrols, and we're exploring how we can manage additional patrols, both during and after business hours, and how our officers can cover more ground effectively. And some other councils we've seen, for example, have purchased mountain bikes so that their officers can patrol popular walking trails and cover more ground more quickly. The additional patrols would also include off-leash parks, because we know that some owners don't do the right thing, and some owners are unable to keep their dogs under effective control. So effectively, dogs must come back when their owner calls them, and sometimes we see that that doesn't happen. So we think it's important to have a presence in those parks too. The feedback we've received, further feedback regarding dog owners, is that there are insufficient bins to clean up after your dog and place it in the bin at some of these facilities and in other public areas frequented by dog walkers. And so we're also proposing to review the location of our bins and some of our signs to encourage people to keep their dogs on leash and to pick up after their dogs. At this stage, we're not proposing to provide dog poo bags. It's something that we may consider in a few years' time, as we've outlined in the plan, but ultimately it's up to dog owners to provide their own bags to pick up after their dogs. The last topic I wanted to touch on is animal welfare, and of course the whole plan's designed with animal welfare in mind, but there's two specific sections that I wanted to highlight that relate to some of the bigger welfare issues. So it's pretty sad, but we have quite an issue with animal hoarding in our municipality, particularly with cats, and it's a really hard problem to solve because we need to consider the welfare of both the animals and the people involved. And so what we're planning to do is to work not only with our animal management partners, but also with some mental health experts to help us to develop a strategy about how we can better resolve some of the hoarding issues that we're coming across. The other one relating to welfare is in section 9 of the plan, which relates to domestic animal businesses. And domestic animal businesses include things like boarding establishments, pet shops, dog training businesses, animal shelters, pet daycare facilities, and breeders, although we don't currently have any registered breeders in the city of Whittlesea. But our role as council in this is to conduct audits of each of these businesses to make sure that welfare standards are being upheld. And while it's the responsibility of the operator to register their domestic animal business, our plan is to identify any unregistered businesses so that we can monitor welfare issues and even extend our audits out to rescue and foster groups, even though they're not included as a domestic animal business, but just to make sure that animals in their care are housed appropriately. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. You'll see on your screen that there's a QR code and there's also a web address that directs you to Menti, which is how you'll get your questions to us tonight. So you can either scan that code on your device or you can head to www.menti.com and you need to enter the code on the screen, which is 93340950. So we'll start. We've got a number of questions that have actually been pre-submitted via our engagement platform. So we'll start with those, but please send through your questions as they pop into your minds. We'll get through as many questions as we can. And just to let you know, the questions that you submit tonight will actually come through to us anonymously. So if you'd like us to know that you have asked a particular question, then please just put your name at the end of the question. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we will hand over to Danny, who will help us with the questions. Thank you, Danny. Okay, so our first question is, what's the value in cat curfews? How do you implement it? And what are the punitive measures? If it's finance related, have we considered the financial burden on predominantly low socioeconomic society? And is it fair to have these sorts of punitive measures given the wellbeing pets provide, especially in the current climate where fewer people are working? Sorry, I'm just... Michael, are you able to answer that?
I am indeed. Thank you, Debbie. So we are considering introducing a cat curfew because they bring about a number of benefits, including reducing the impact on wildlife, minimising cats becoming a nuisance for others by fighting or defecating on private property, and for the safety of cats. And that might be that there's less chance of them being hit by a car or being lost or any other issue where they may be injured or hurt. Implementation of an effective curfew does require a range of things. And to do this, we're planning to help cat owners to understand their responsibilities and to put practical measures in place to keep your cat confined to your property. It is important to note that if we did introduce a cat curfew, your cat can still go outside, and Debbie did mention that through her presentation. It's just that they must be contained to your yard. And we have seen people do this really successfully by using things like cat runs and installing cat rollers or PVC pipe on the top of the fence so the cat isn't able to scale it and get out. And we also plan to increase our cat trapping program so that we know which cats are not confined and we can target specific owners with education or untimely infringements if necessary. Infringements if necessary. The amount of fines is determined annually by the state government, and with penalties increasing for subsequent offences, fines can range between $183 and $549 in total.
Thank you, Michael. Our next question is around dog attacks. So multiple dog attacks are happening at the dog park. So what can council do to police this? And if you can't, maybe our money could be better spent on more after hours ranger duties. Responsible pet ownership is clearly not fixing this issue. Is a photo of the animal and owner enough for council to deal with this issue? And for this one, I think I might hand over to you, Ben.
Yes, thanks, Debbie. We are aware of dog attacks occurring in dog parks and have increased our patrols of these areas, including increasing our after hours and particularly evening patrols. We seem to find it's getting quite busy around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening. While we try to maintain a presence in these parks, we cannot be everywhere at once, and we need dog owners to take responsibility for their dog's actions. This includes making sure that your dog will come back when it's called, which we consider to be effective control of the dog at all times, and paying attention to your dog when you are at the park and what it is doing. In relation to photos, any evidence is good evidence. While a photo is useful, we still need to be able to identify and find the owner to proceed with an investigation. Thank you. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Ben. Next question. Thank you, Danny. So this relates to a specific part of the domestic animal management plan, which is in regards to rehoming of animals and reducing euthanasia. And this is a no-brainer and should be happening now. It should be the first and foremost before euthanasia is even considered. Absolutely. And absolutely in all instances now, council will reunite or rehome animals where it's appropriate. We do our best to try to keep those euthanasia figures low. And the intention of this paragraph in the plan is to enhance the relationships that we've got with our rescue groups and to develop some good working agreements so that we can keep improving in that space. Danny, we're ready for our next question. Do we have any plans to de-sex cats in the community? Ben, are you able to answer that one?
Yes, thanks, Debbie. I'm assuming this question is in relation to unowned cats or semi-owned cats. So if we're talking about unowned cats, council does not have any plans to de-sex semi-owned cats or unowned cats. And in fact, we are not legally able to capture unowned cats to de-sex and release them like they do in some other countries. Ultimately, the people feeding these cats need to take on the ownership of the cat and register, microchip and de-sex the cat so it is cared for appropriately. In regards to owned cats, we are proposing to make de-sexing mandatory for all new cat registrations from 2022, which will be subject to a community consultation. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, our next question. I'm wondering if real estate agents or landlords can also play a part by informing council when they lease to new tenants who have dogs. That's a very good question. Michael, can I hand over to you, please?
Sure, thanks, Debbie. This is actually a really good idea, and it's not something that we'd considered before. Look, we can't actually do anything formal with real estate agents, nor can we mandate the requirement for them to notify us, but we are definitely open to receiving notifications from real estate agents to help us follow up with registrations, and that's something that we can do working with those real estate agents going forward.
Thank you. Next question, please, Danny. Okay, why is Whittlesea Council not providing dog waste bags? Adrian or Alex, are you able to answer this question, please?
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. I can answer that one. You alluded to this earlier. Council's dog off-leash management plan outlines that bag dispensers and bags are not provided in dog off-leash parks by council. The plan recognises that dog owners are expected to carry bags with them at all times when walking dogs in public areas. And if this expectation is met, there is no requirement to provide bags. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Okay, the next question is relating to lifetime pet registrations. And the question is, Whittlesea Council needs to promote lifetime pet registration up to the Victorian government. And it's an interesting topic because, as some of you might know, New South Wales has lifetime pet registrations in place. But the difference is that pet registrations in New South Wales are actually managed by the state government rather than the local councils. So there would be some complexities involved in lifetime registration under the Victorian model, where each of the 79 local councils in Victoria are responsible for pet registration, but certainly encourage people to contact their local MPs if they think that this would be a better model, to start suggesting that that legislation might change. Thank you, Danny. Okay, the next question is there a chance that park water fountains can be cleaned on a more regular basis? The pet bowls are always rusty and dirty. I usually don't allow my dog to drink from park fountain bowls. I'll hand over to you again, please, Adrian.
Sure. Thanks, Debbie. Drinking fountains are a really important asset, not only in our dog off-leash parks, but also across the entire parks and open space network in the city of Whittlesea. Drinking fountains and dog water bowls are thoroughly cleaned at a minimum every 21 days across all public open space areas. And in high use areas such as dog off-leash parks, they're cleaned a lot more regularly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, do we have a night curfew for cats already? I can answer this one. We currently don't have any curfews in place at the moment at this time, but while that's the case, we still strongly encourage cat owners to keep their cats contained to their property for all the reasons we've already outlined earlier tonight. Thanks, Danny. The next question is, what can council do to better enforce dogs being on leash? And I might hand over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, as mentioned before in the presentation from Debbie, we are looking at exploring ways for council staff to be able to patrol more areas for dogs being off leash. Obviously including introducing mountain bikes for our staff to cover more areas, or more ground on popular walking and cycling tracks and waterway tracks. And again, we try to maintain a presence in our community, but it's up to the dog owners to do the right thing. Our leash laws are, you do need to have your dogs on leash in all public areas. Penalties in place for people caught with their dogs off leash in non-designated areas, including an on-the-spot $183 fine. Our infringements in this space have increased significantly. Just over the last year, we have issued more than 7 times the number of infringements and warnings from the previous year, and we are hoping for this to increase this year. As part of the earlier consultation of the draft plan, council were giving away dog leashes in a bid to encourage responsible dog ownership. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Ben. Probably another one for you, Ben. What can be done about 2 large dogs who bark every time a person walks past their house and disturb the neighbour's peace and quiet?
No problems. The council can investigate barking dog complaints, but we do need assistance from neighbours to do this, including keeping diaries of when the dog barks so that we can time our site visits according to when the barking is happening. Barking must be unreasonable in terms of both its volume and duration for council to be able to take any action against the owner. Barking dog complaints can be difficult to resolve, so as part of the draft plan, we are exploring what technology is available to monitor barking, which would provide more definitive evidence and lessen the onus on neighbours and residents to record when the dogs are barking. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you. Thanks, Danny. We should have an off-the-leash dog park in Kellanack Recreation Reserve. Adrian or Alex, are you available to answer this, please?
Yes, I can answer that for you, Debbie. We do have a master plan for Kellanack Recreation Reserve, which addresses proposed facilities and the upgrade to the existing facilities. Unfortunately, this does not include a dog off-leash area. This is due to constraints around the existing conditions. A lot of the free space in Kellanack is quite steep and not suitable for a dog park, and the other flatter areas are quite close to the playground or the sports oval, so it isn't really suitable for an allocated off-leash area. But there are fenced dog off-leash areas at other reserves close by at Redleap and Norris Bank and at Delacombe Reserve.
Thanks, Alex. The next question also relates to off-leash areas. So why is there no off-leash dog walking tracks, trails, or places dogs are allowed to play and run on open fields? Alex?
Yes. So we have tried to implement open, unfenced dog off-leash areas in the past, and we did not receive a lot of support from the community. And this really comes down to the potential between conflict with surrounding facilities and other users. And as you said before in your presentation, there are some dog owners in the community that aren't doing the right thing, which is causing some hesitancy for the broader community to have unfenced dog off-leash areas. But we are continuing to investigate sites which are suitable. The most important thing is that we're making sure that our open spaces are safe for all users. If there are any sites, though, that people think would be suitable, we do invite them to send in those ideas.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, the next question is, why does it cost more to register a dog than a cat? And I can answer this one. It is a trend across all councils in Victoria, or at least the ones that I've checked recently. And essentially, dogs cost more just because there are more services on offer for dogs. So things like our dog parks and off-leash areas. Council also spends quite a bit of time investigating a whole series of dog complaints, so things like off-leash or barking and dog attacks and the like. So it does cost us a little bit more in terms of our service delivery. Thank you, Danny. Okay, the next question is, why are cats being demonised by the Whittlesea Council? Birds are very destructive to homes, yet council does nothing to control their numbers. Michael, can I hand over to you?
Thanks, Debbie. Essentially, councils are playing catch up when it comes to cat management. The Domestic Animals Act stipulates what is required to manage and contain dogs, but it doesn't mention cats, which is why we have a lot of councils going about it different ways. So we've got some with curfews and some without. With your reference to birds, we're assuming you're talking about native birds, and they can sometimes cause damage to wooden houses or framing. And unfortunately, council doesn't have any jurisdiction over these birds and are essentially unable to assist with this matter.
Thank you, Michael. The next question is, can we have more than 2 dogs per house? And Ben, I'll ask you to jump in and answer, please.
No problems, thanks, Debbie. In residential areas, you can have more than 2 dogs per house with an excess animal permit. Each application for a permit is dealt with on a case-by-case basis, given the size of the property and the amount of animals to be kept on the property. It does require permission from your neighbours to have the permit, and that we can, like I said, it is done on a case-by-case scenario. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, the next question is, what action can be taken regarding barking dogs when council doesn't take action? And Ben, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks again. We do encourage neighbours to work together to come to an agreement where council has deemed it not to be a nuisance. We would suggest, if you're unable to reach an agreement with your neighbour, then we would recommend reaching out to the Dispute Settlement Centre of Victoria, which is a free service provided by the state government. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, the next question is, would council consider introducing an off-leash area for greyhounds? So the City of Whittlesea is home to 185 registered greyhounds, which represents about 1% of our registered dog population. And while there's no plans at the moment to introduce a specific area for greyhounds, it is something that we could consider in the future, but no plans at the moment. Thanks, Danny. Okay, the next question is, why don't we have a ranger to do 24/7 wildlife euthanasia? And I will also answer that one. So this does fall a little bit outside of the scope of the plan, but we do currently offer a service to euthanise injured wildlife during business hours, and we refer out of hours calls through to Wildlife Victoria. And the reason for this at the moment is because Wildlife Victoria can apply for grants from the state government to be able to fund this service, whereas council is not eligible for funding for this service. But we do offer it during business hours. Thanks, Danny. The next question also relates to an item in the draft plan, which is an education programs at schools about responsible pet ownership, which we have scheduled in until 2024. So the question is, why can't we do it in 2022? And essentially, currently there is already a program that's offered by the state government about responsible pet ownerships in schools, and this will continue, but we would like to expand on that and have our officers do some of those things in schools as well. But at the moment, just due to time constraints and some of the other actions that we've got outlined in the draft plan, we've scheduled it for 2024. So something that we certainly want to do, but just because of time, we think 2024 is a more realistic time frame while that other state government program's going. Thanks, Danny. The next question is, can council waive registration fees for indoor cats? And if you don't mind, I'll answer this one too. So the way the Domestic Animals Act is structured, council must set a minimum and a maximum fee for pet registration. And the minimum fee relates to a reduced fee category, which means animals that are desexed or members of applicable dog or cat organisations or animals over 10 years old. And the maximum fee must be 3 times the amount of the minimum fee. That's what the Domestic Animals Act says. And it usually relates to undesexed animals or dangerous dogs or restricted breed dogs. And we're also required to offer half price registration for pension card holders. Unfortunately, that doesn't extend to healthcare card holders, and that's determined by the state government. But having said all of that, council can make policy decisions in regards to whether or not they waive fees for certain categories of animals, and this would be considered when council's reviewing the subsidised registration fees that we have listed as an initiative in the draft plan. And just as I guess a side note, regardless of whether we charge the pet owner a fee, there is still a fee that council must pay to the state government per registered animal. So just a bit of a side note there. Thanks, Danny. This is a statement saying we need more dog waste bins. And Adrian or Alex, are you able to respond, please?
Yeah, I can respond to that one, Debbie. Yeah, bins are really important. The provision of waste bins are generally located in parks where prolonged stays are encouraged. However, having said that, with more and more people using our shared user path network along open space corridors, there's certainly an opportunity to identify where more waste bins and for that matter, more public furniture such as seats, etc., can be located. So we do encourage community to provide feedback and comments to contribute to the identification of where these key locations could be. So yeah, please pass on feedback where you can.
Thanks, Adrian. Okay. I understand the incentive of offering reduced discount to new registrations. Why not offer something to people who have done the responsible thing and always had animals registered? That's a really good idea, and certainly one that I think we should note in terms of the overarching initiative in terms of looking at registration fees. So thank you for that. That's a really good idea, and we'll certainly consider it. The next question is regarding a recent dog attack, which is really sad. So there was a dog recently killed by 2 strays on Darebin Creek Trail. What is council doing to ensure that dangerous dogs are managed? These incidents are scary for those with young kids. They are absolutely really scary. Dog attacks are a really, it's an awful issue. We are aware of this particular attack and we are investigating. There's not much more we can say about that at the moment just because it is ongoing. And in terms of dangerous dogs, there are rules and laws in place around how we manage dogs that we already know are dangerous, and unfortunately that's usually after an incident has occurred, and we have some really strict controls in place for that. In terms of dogs that are roaming, like the ones that you're referring to, we really rely on the public to do the right thing, to keep their dogs locked up, to keep their dogs on a leash, to get their dogs trained, to make sure that they are socialised with other dogs. And we do what we can, like I said earlier, to have that presence out in the community. But unfortunately, we can't be everywhere at once. And that's why, unfortunately, we do get some of these issues that occur. I'm not sure, Ben or Michael, if you have anything to add to that. No?
Yeah, all I can say is we are investigating it further. We are looking at leads on that matter, and yeah, we do take these things very serious, and we prosecute matters where we deem it appropriate, and we do declare dogs to be dangerous and menacing if we deem it appropriate.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you for that question. Okay, the next question is, my dog is trained and well controlled off leash. Some owners have less control even when on leash. Isn't it more about control than on or off leash? Ben, did you want to answer this one?
Yes, no problem. Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, we can understand that obviously some dogs are very well voice controlled and very well under effective control at all times. And it's like you mentioned, some dogs are very reactive on lead, and we have had instances where attacks have happened where both dogs have been on lead. I would agree that it's all about education. We have a range of dog trainers within the City of Whittlesea that are registered within the City of Whittlesea, and we strongly encourage people to get their dogs obedience trained, go to clubs and encourage that. So we would strongly encourage that, and I think we do look at that whenever we try to educate people.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you. The next question is there CCTV at dog parks to record dog attacks? Adrian, can I ask you to answer that one?
Yeah, I can answer that one. We currently don't have CCTV at dog off-leash parks or in vicinity of public open space around dog off-leash parks. We haven't had many CCTV cameras put in around public open space, but it is something that we are starting to look into more frequently with some trials in other areas, predominantly around shopping precincts. So it is something that can be considered, but at the moment we don't have any CCTV cameras in.
Thanks, Adrian. And I'll just add to that, that while CCTV can be very useful in terms of being able to, I guess, get that evidence, like Ben was saying before about photos, it would still require us to then be able to identify who the owner was and who the dogs were. And that's why we often put the call out to the community to, I guess, help us to locate those dogs or those owners. But certainly CCTV could be useful in those areas. And thank you, Adrian. Next question. Might be the last question. I think that's the last question. No others coming through? No more questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us tonight to come along and hear about our draft domestic animal management plan, and thank you for your questions as well. I really hope that you've learned something new and will consider providing a submission on our draft plan. So a reminder that submissions close on the 30th of September, and they can be submitted through engage.whittlesea.vic.gov.au or via email to animal.management@whittlesea.vic.gov.au. We look forward to receiving your submissions. Thank you and enjoy your long weekend.